Republican Senator Kit Bond from Missouri. Senator Bond, the Speaker of the House has accused the Central Intelligence Agency of being filled with liars who lied to her while briefing Congress on one of the important issues of our time. You serve on the Intel Committee. What's your response?
That's great. That's really unfortunate to trash our intelligence community as she's done. It only builds on the fear and the inward looking that's come about since the release of the opinions. I've seen the contemporaneous memos in cable traffic, and they told her, as far as we can tell, what was going on and what they planned to do.
How many people were read into this program? How many people knew about it in 2003?
It started off with the Gang of Four, which is the Republican and Democratic leaders of the Intelligence Committee on the House and the Senate side. Then it was moved up to briefing of the leadership, the majority and minority leaders, the House and Senate. And finally, we were briefed. The full committee was briefed, I believe it was the fall of '06.
Senator, has the Central Intelligence Agency, to the best of your knowledge, ever lied to you, ever given you false information intentionally?
Well, they don't always tell the truth when they're working abroad, but when they have dealt with us, and I've dealt with them on some of the Gang of Four notifications, they go out of their way to lay it out. They have charts, they have briefing points that are handed out so you can see what they're saying, you can ask them questions, and when they come before the Congress, particularly on a sensitive matter, they are exquisite in detail, take a long time, and offer opportunities for questions or comments.
And Senator, could you explain to Americans why the CIA, for selfish reasons, would never lie to members of Congress? What would happen if you found out that the CIA had lied to you? What negative impacts would that have on the agency?
Well, number one, if somebody lied to me, we would make sure they got fired. If they weren't fired, there would be action taken, cutting the budgets and raising all kinds of hell with the agency. They know that they depend upon us as representatives of the American people to shoot straight with them. If they don't, we control the purse.
Right, and of course, that was my point. They would never lie to Congress because they would get crushed. The budgetary, they would be crushed in the next time they requested something. Senator, you know what I'm talking about. I cannot even imagine even a backbencher being lied to, because it would get around and the CIA would be thrashed the next time they asked for money.
Well, Joe, you know that as much as they try to keep things quiet, that place, there's still leaks. You can still get information. We get a lot of information about the agency, but when they come over to brief us, they have it laid out in advance. They have it written down, and they've got the whole story. They know they better tell us straight.
Senator, usually after a House Speaker, if the House Speaker would accuse the CIA of lying under normal circumstances, I would probably ask you how damaging that is to the Central Intelligence Agency and the intel community. But in this case, on the Hill, is the feeling that it's probably more damaging to Nancy Pelosi because so few people believe her story?
I think she really stepped in it. I haven't seen. I just saw the replays of some of the news conference, and it was a tragic display. But the CIA, after the release of the opinions, already went into a CYA mode. They were stabbed in the back. Now they're being called liars to their face. It really has hurt the morale at the agency and the entire community.
You know, I also just wonder the takeaway of this story, beyond the fact that the news conference was another bumbling news conference where people are now, even in the Washington Post coverage of this, sir, showing 4 different statements that she made over a period of time that conflict. I guess what bothers me is it shows a lack of coherence or credibility on her convictions pertaining to the issue of torture and enhanced interrogation techniques. And isn't that the ultimate loss here in the national conversation?
Well, I don't know what's left of her reputation, but I can say that the cables that went out after it reported that the people who had been briefed were told all about the techniques, and they were really interested in the kind of information that was received. They wanted to know if we were getting the information we needed, because at the time we were all frightened about another repeat of 9/11. And apparently those who were briefed were asking, did we get enough information?
Senator, we've got Time Magazine's Mark Halpern with us. Mark?
Senator, for an ordinary American who doesn't follow this closely, what's important about this scrutiny of Speaker Pelosi? What questions should ordinary Americans be thinking about in terms of judging her past actions and her statements yesterday?
Yeah.
I think it would be very helpful if the CIA would release more of the details, since regrettably this has gotten to be a major subject of discussion. I think that the people, that the public ought to know the accounts, contemporaneous accounts made by the agency of the briefings. I really regret that not only the American public, but more importantly, Al-Qaeda and our other enemies know all about the enhanced interrogation techniques and how we don't do anything to detainees that we don't do to our volunteers going into the military, the Marines, the SEALs, or pilot training.
Senator Bon, Willie Geist here is someone who sat in many of these. Good to see you this morning. Someone who sat in many of these intelligence briefings. Do you find Speaker Pelosi's story plausible at all, just hypothetically even, that they told her possibly that it was happening, that it was on the table, waterboarding, but they weren't using it?
Well, I've been in briefings, and they don't have briefings to tell you the techniques they're not going to use. That does not...
That's a really good way of putting it.
That dog doesn't hunt.
Oh,
so you're not buying
goodness.
That one, I'm not buying that baby.
All right.
But that is, I mean, look, he makes an incredible point.
Yeah,
why would they waste their time talking about what they're not going to do?
Small talk.
Right, so, yeah, we just came up
Small
with
talk?
That's kind of small talk, yeah.
And we want to chat with you about a couple of crazy things.
Here's what we're not doing.
Hey, we got some wild ideas. I can tell you, those guys come in locked and loaded. They're buttoned down.
Yeah.
It's all out on the briefing papers that I have seen, and it isn't small talk.
Wow. All right. Hey, Senator, it's great to have you with us.
Thank you, Senator.